In the harsh expanse of Deadwater Ridge, where power corrupts and silence is golden, Catherine Lawson's quiet life as a widowed schoolteacher shatters when she refuses to look away from a violent truth. Her courage costs her dearly ambushed in her own schoolhouse, tied up and left broken in the dark. But fate has other plans. Graham Thorne, a wealthy rancher with his own dark history, discovers her plight and makes a stand that will echo through the valley. Not to this woman. Taking her into his protection ignites more than just town whispers. As Catherine heals within the walls of his ranch, their growing bond challenges the corrupt foundations of Deadwater Ridge. But the same forces that tried to silence her are circling again, darker and deadlier than before. Will their love be strong enough to break the chains of a town built on buried secrets? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The silver locket caught the morning light as Catherine Lawson's fingers absently traced its worn edges. Inside, behind the tarnished metal, her late husband Thomas smiled back at her, forever frozen in that moment 3 years ago, just before. Everything changed. The familiar weight against her chest steadied her as she stood at the weathered oak desk, watching the last rays of dawn filter through the schoolhouse's dusty windows. Deadwater Ridge wasn't the kind of place that appeared on maps anymore. The town had faded like an old photograph, its edges worn by time and neglect. But within these schoolhouse walls, Catherine had carved out her own kingdom of hope, a place where children could still dream beyond the shadow of the looming mountains. She lifted the brass school bell, its surface smooth from generations of hands before hers. The clear, bright tone rang out across the yard, calling her students to another day of learning. One by one, they filtered in. Farm kids with calloused hands, ranch children with mud on their boots, and town children in slightly better clothes. Each face told its own story of hardship and resilience. "Good morning, Mrs. Lawson," they chorused, some bright with morning energy, others still fighting sleep. Jenny Martinez slipped in last, her dark eyes downcast, shoulders hunched beneath her too-thin jacket. Catherine made a mental note to speak with her after class. Something had been troubling the usually vibrant 14-year-old lately. Today, Catherine began, chalk dust dancing in the morning light as she wrote on the blackboard, "We're going to talk about courage." Her hand paused mid-stroke. "Can anyone tell me what that word means to them?" Little Tommy Wilson's hand shot up. "It's like not being scared of nothing." Catherine smiled gently. "That's one way to look at it. But sometimes, Tommy, courage isn't about not being scared. Sometimes it's about being terrified and doing what's right anyway." She caught Jenny shifting uncomfortably in her seat, and something in Catherine's chest tightened. The girl had been different ever since that town council meeting 2 weeks ago, where Mayor Harrison's son had stared at her with those cold eyes that reminded Catherine too much of his father. The lesson continued. But Catherine's thoughts kept drifting to Thomas. He'd understood courage, the quiet kind that came with standing up for what was right, even in a town like Deadwater Ridge, the kind that had ultimately cost him everything. As the children filed out for lunch, Catherine touched the locket again, drawing strength from it. Thomas had always said that truth was like water in the desert, precious and rare, but vital for survival. Looking at Jenny's empty desk, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that soon she'd have to decide just how much she was willing to risk for that truth. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the schoolhouse floor, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, a warning of storms to come, both in the sky and in the hearts of those who called Deadwater Ridge home. The torn homework assignment lay on Catherine's desk like an accusation. Jenny's neat handwriting filled most of the page, but it was the abrupt end of her essay on local history that made Catherine's hands tremble. The last sentence trailed off mid-word, as if the girl had been interrupted, or worse. 3 days. Jenny Martinez hadn't been to school in 3 days. Probably just another runaway, Sheriff Mills had drawled when Catherine reported it, not even bothering to look up from his coffee. "These Mexican families, they come and go." His dismissive wave had made her blood boil, but it was the slight smirk on Bradley Harrison's face, the mayor's son who'd been lounging in the sheriff's office, that truly chilled her. Now, alone in her classroom, Catherine spread out Jenny's last assignments. The girl had been researching the town's founding families for her project. The Harrison family built Deadwater Ridge on cattle and copper, Jenny had written, but some say there were other businesses, darker ones, that the sentence ended. There, the pencil mark dragging across the page. Catherine remembered Jenny's face that last afternoon, the way she'd lingered after class, clutching her notebook. Mrs. Lawson. She'd started, then stopped, glancing nervously at the window. Never mind, it's nothing. But her eyes had told a different story. The phone call to Jenny's parents had been heartbreaking. Maria Martinez's voice cracked as she explained how Jenny had gone to the library to finish her homework and never came home. The police say she must have run away, but my Jenny wouldn't. She wouldn't leave without... The mother's words dissolved into quiet sobs. Catherine pulled out the stack of old newspapers she'd started collecting. Headlines from the past decade painted a disturbing pattern. 3 other teenage girls had run away from Deadwater Ridge. All had been asking questions, all had vanished without a trace. And all the cases had been handled by Sheriff Mills, Bradley Harrison's former football coach and longtime family friend. A knock at the classroom door made her jump. Bradley Harrison himself stood in the doorway, his cologne cutting through the chalk dust air. "Working late, Mrs. Lawson?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Dad wanted me to check on you. Make sure you're not troubling yourself too much about the Martinez girl. Small towns like ours, people come and go all the time. Best not to make a fuss." Catherine's fingers found Thomas's locket. "Every child. Matters, Mr. Harrison? Or at least they should in a civilized society." His smile tightened. "Careful, Mrs. Lawson. Wouldn't want people thinking you're stirring up trouble. This town has a way of dealing with troublemakers." He picked up Jenny's essay, scanning it with feigned interest. Interesting topic she chose. History can be dangerous, though. Some stories are better left in the past. After he left, Catherine sat in the growing darkness, Jenny's torn homework burning in her mind like a beacon. Thomas had died investigating the Harrison family's other businesses. Now Jenny was missing after researching the same past. The choice crystallized before her: stay quiet and safe, or stand up and risk everything. But looking at Jenny's empty desk, Catherine knew there was no choice at all. She began to write, documenting everything she knew, everything she suspected. The truth would come out, even if she had to dig it up with her bare hands. Thunder rolled across the valley again, closer now. Catherine gathered her evidence, tucking it into her satchel. As she locked up the schoolhouse, she didn't notice the black truck parked in the shadows or the men watching her every move. The storm was about to break in more ways than one. The anonymous note had been slipped under her door sometime in the night. Catherine stared at the words, cut from newspapers and pasted in crooked lines. "Leave it alone or join your husband." Her hands didn't shake as she placed it in a manila envelope. They'd gone beyond fear now, straight into a strange, clear anger. The morning brought another kind of message. Parents called to withdraw their children from her class, each excuse more hollow than the last. By noon, her classroom had emptied to half its size. The remaining students sat scattered like islands in a sea of vacant desks, their eyes downcast, as if courage itself had become contagious. "It's just temporary, dear," Margaret Wheeler, the elderly librarian, whispered during lunch. They sat alone in the library's back room, the only place in town where Catherine still felt welcome. "They'll come around once this ugly business blows over." But Margaret's arthritic fingers worried at her cardigan buttons, betraying her uncertainty. "Did they come around for Thomas?" Catherine asked quietly. The silence that followed was answer. "Enough." Margaret reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a thin folder. "I've been keeping these," she said, sliding it across the table. "Newspaper clippings, old police reports. things that seemed odd. Your Thomas wasn't the first to ask questions about the Harrisons, but maybe he was the bravest. Catherine opened the folder. Decades of carefully preserved documents told a story of systematic corruption. Land deals that always seemed to favor the Harrison family. Businesses that mysteriously burned down after refusing to sell. And people who disappeared after asking too many questions. Jenny found these, didn't she? Catherine's voice was barely a whisper. Margaret nodded. She was such a bright girl, came in every day after school, digging through the archives, said it was for a history project, but the old woman's eyes filled with tears. The day before, she disappeared. Bradley Harrison was here, watching her from between the shelves. A sharp rap on the library door made them both jump. Sheriff Mills stood in the doorway, his badge catching the fluorescent light. "Ladies," he drawled, "hope I'm not interrupting anything important." His eyes fixed on the folder, still open between them. Catherine closed it slowly, deliberately. "Just catching up on some local history, Sheriff. Fascinating reading." "History's a tricky thing, Mrs. Lawson. Memory plays tricks. People remember things that never happened, forget things that did." He stepped closer, boots heavy on the old wooden floor. Sometimes they even convince themselves they're seeing patterns where there aren't any. Can lead to all sorts of unfortunate conclusions, like the pattern of missing girls. Catherine met his gaze steadily. Or the pattern of convenient accidents that seem to follow anyone who questions the Harrison family. The sheriff's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and hard beneath. "You know your husband had trouble with patterns too. Saw conspiracies everywhere, right up until that tragic brake failure." He touched the brim of his hat. "You take care now, Mrs. Lawson. These mountain roads can be mighty dangerous." After he left, Margaret's wrinkled hand found Catherine's. "You're not alone, dear. Some of us remember what this town was before the Harrisons, what it could be again." She pressed a key into Catherine's palm. "Backdoor key to the library. Use it if you need to. And Catherine?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Be careful. They won't warn you twice." That evening, walking home, Catherine felt eyes on her from every darkened window. The town she'd loved for so long had become foreign territory, filled with shadows and silence. But with each step, the manila envelope tucked in her bag reminded her of Jenny, of Thomas, of all the others who had dared to speak truth to power. Tomorrow, she would take everything she'd gathered to the state police. Let the Harrisons try to bury their secrets then. But tonight she had lessons to prepare, because some of her students were still coming to school, still looking to her for guidance. And as long as one child still needed her, she would not back down. The wind carried the scent of rain and something else, something that reminded her of the day Thomas died. Catherine quickened her pace, Thomas's locket bouncing against her heart like a warning. Catherine's reading glasses lay broken on the schoolhouse floor. One lens cracked like a spider's web. They'd been a gift from Thomas for all those papers. "You grade, sweetheart." Now they caught the last light of dusk, glinting like tears on the wooden boards. She hadn't heard them come in. The soft scrape of boot leather on wood had blended with the evening wind, and she'd been too absorbed in packaging her evidence for the state police. The first warning had been a shadow falling across her desk. Then everything happened at once. Rough hands, the smell of whiskey and cologne. Bradley Harrison's voice, thick with false regret. "Should have minded your own business, Mrs. Lawson." The others, 3 men in cheap suits and expensive watches, said nothing as they bound her hands with her own scarf, pulled tight enough to burn. "This is still a civilized town," Bradley continued, watching as they forced her into her own chair. "We handle things properly here. Give people chances to reconsider their positions." He picked up the manila envelope, thumbed through its contents. "Quite the collection you've got. Dad always said Thomas was thorough. Guess it runs in the family." Catherine felt a strange calm settle over her, the kind that comes when fear pushes past its breaking point. Jenny Martinez was 14 years old. The back of his hand caught her across the face, snapping her head to the side. The locket at her throat swung like a pendulum. Jenny Martinez should have kept her mouth shut, just like you should now. They took turns then, asking questions about copies, about who else knew. Catherine tasted blood but kept her silence. She thought of Jenny, of Thomas, of all the others who had disappeared into Deadwater Ridge's long shadow. Her silence was all she had left to give them. Hours passed, marked only by the steady drip of rain that had begun to fall. They'd taken everything, her files, her phone, even her wedding ring. But they hadn't found the key evidence hidden in Margaret's library, waiting to be sent if Catherine didn't show up tomorrow. "Make it look convincing," Bradley finally said, lighting a cigarette. "But remember, Dad wants her found alive. Eventually." He paused at the door, smoke curling around his face. "Teaching's a dangerous profession, Mrs. Lawson. All sorts of accidents can happen, especially to widows who don't know their place." The first blow caught her in the ribs, driving the air from her lungs. She didn't scream, wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, she retreated deep inside herself to memories of Thomas, of their small house with its garden of wild roses, of students' faces lighting up when they finally understood a difficult lesson. When they finally left her, tied to her own chair in the darkened classroom, the only sound was the rain and her own ragged breathing. Blood from her split lip dripped slowly onto her white blouse, blooming like red roses. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd worn this blouse the day she'd first stood up at the town council meeting. Catherine tested her bonds, but they held firm. The scarf bit deeper with each movement, and her shoulders screamed from being wrenched behind her. Somewhere in the darkness, a clock ticked away minutes or hours. Time had lost its meaning in the pain-filled dark. She thought of Margaret, waiting with those documents. By morning, they'd be on their way to the state capital. Some truths couldn't be buried, no matter how deep you dug the grave. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the classroom in stark white. In that instant, she saw her glasses on the floor, broken but not destroyed. Like her, like this town. Thunder followed, and in its rumble she heard something else. Hoofbeats on the wet earth drawing closer. Catherine lifted her head, tasting blood and defiance. They hadn't killed her. That had been their mistake. As long as she drew breath, she would find a way to expose their crimes. Thomas had taught her that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being broken and standing up anyway. The hoofbeats stopped, boots on the wooden porch. A shadow, darker than the rest, moved past the window, and then the door opened. The old ranch deed in Graham Thorne's pocket had brought him back to Deadwater Ridge tonight, its edges worn soft as cloth from 15 years of carrying it around the world. But it was fate, or something darker, that led him past the schoolhouse. Just as lightning split the sky, he'd seen the black trucks leaving, recognized the entitled swagger of Bradley Harrison even at a distance. Some things never changed in Deadwater Ridge. The strong still fed on the weak, just like when he'd left all those years ago. The schoolhouse door opened silently under his hand. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scene in harsh bursts. Overturned chairs, scattered papers, and in the center of it all, a woman tied to a chair, her dark hair falling forward like a curtain. But it was the set of her shoulders that caught his attention, straight and unbowed, despite everything. "Don't move." His voice was quiet, but carried in the darkness. He approached slowly, boots deliberately heavy on the wooden floor. No sudden movements. He'd seen enough trauma in his life to know better. "I'm going to turn on a light. It might hurt your eyes." The small desk lamp cast a warm circle in the darkness. She lifted her head then, and Graham felt something shift in his chest, blood on her lip, a bruise darkening her cheek, but her eyes held steel. "Mrs. Lawson," he said, recognizing her from town gossip, the widowed teacher, the one asking questions. "I'm Graham Thorne, the prodigal son," she managed, voice rough but steady. "Come home to reclaim the family empire?" He moved behind her, gentle fingers examining the knots. Something like that. The familiar rage burned in his gut at the cruel efficiency of the Bonds. This might hurt. Try to breathe. As he worked the knots loose, he caught the scent of her perfume beneath the metallic tang of blood, something subtle, like wildflowers. The contrast made his hands want to shake, but he kept them steady. She'd seen enough weakness tonight. They'll come back, she said, as the last knot fell away. When they realized, she tried to stand and swayed, color draining from her face. Graham caught her before she could fall, one arm around her waist. She was smaller than she'd looked in the chair, but she radiated a strength that had nothing to do with size. "Easy," he murmured. "Let's get you out of here." "My students," she started. "We'll need you alive and well," he finished. The deed in his pocket seemed to burn. 15 years ago, he'd walked away from this town's corruption, left it to rot. And in his absence, it had only gotten worse. She pulled away slightly, finding her balance. "You don't understand. There's evidence. A missing girl. They've buried so many secrets." "I understand better than you know." He reached into his jacket, pulled out the weathered deed. In the lamp's glow, the Thorne family seal was still visible in the corner. "My father was the last federal marshal to try to clean up Deadwater Ridge. The Harrisons buried him in a silver mine shaft. Never found the body." Recognition flickered in her eyes. 1998, the mining accident. Graham nodded. "I was 19. Took the family land settlement and walked away. Spent 15 years building something else, something powerful enough to fight back." His hand found her elbow as she swayed again. "But that's a story for when you're safer." A vehicle's headlights swept across the windows. Catherine tensed, but Graham was already moving, extinguishing the lamp. "My horse is out back. Do you trust me?" She studied him in the darkness, one hand pressed to her ribs. "I don't know you." "No," he agreed. "But you know what I'm not. I'm not them." Another set of headlights, voices outside now. Catherine's hand found his arm, gripping hard. "The evidence will keep until tomorrow." He guided her toward the back door. "Right now, you need a doctor and a safe place to rest." She stopped at the threshold, rain misting her face. "Why are you helping me?" Graham thought of his father, of 15 years of running, of the weight of that deed in his pocket. But looking at her, bloody but unbowed, fierce despite her fear, he found a different truth. "Because," he said simply, "not to this woman." The rain covered their escape into the darkness, his horse sure-footed on the familiar trails. Behind them, flashlight beams searched the empty schoolhouse. But Catherine Lawson was already gone, held secure against Graham's chest as they rode toward the lights of Thorne Ranch, bright as stars against the storm-dark sky. The grandmother's quilt wrapped around Catherine's shoulders was a tapestry of faded blues and soft grays, worn to impossible softness by decades of use. She sat in the ranch house's kitchen window seat, watching dawn paint the mountains gold, while Graham moved quietly around the old-fashioned space, making coffee strong enough to wake the dead. "My grandmother made that quilt," he said, setting a steaming mug beside her. "Said every piece told a story. The blue there," he touched a corner gently, "was from my father's first uniform shirt." 3 days had passed since the schoolhouse. The bruises had deepened to purple, but the Dr. Graham called, a discreet woman from 2 towns over, had confirmed nothing was broken, just badly bruised, inside and out. "Your grandmother," Catherine's voice was stronger today. "She raised. You hear?" Graham leaned against the window frame, his own coffee untouched. "After Mom died, yeah, Dad was always working, trying to clean up the county. Gamma Rose said I was too serious for a boy." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Made me learn to dance in this kitchen. Said every man worth his salt should know how to waltz." The morning light caught his profile, highlighting silver threads in his dark hair. At 44, Graham Thorne wore his years like well-fitted leather, marked by weather and work, but stronger for it. "Why did you really come back?" Catherine asked, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "After 15 years, he was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun climb over the ridge. "Gamma Rose died last month, left me a letter with the deed." He pulled out a worn envelope, handled it like something precious, said it was time to stop running, that some lands were worth fighting for. Catherine thought of her own small house in town, of the garden Thomas had planted, of Jenny Martinez's empty desk. And are they worth fighting for? Wasn't sure until 3 nights ago. His eyes met hers, dark and steady. Then I saw you in that schoolhouse, refusing to break. Made me remember what courage looks like. Heat that had nothing to do with coffee rose in her cheeks. She looked away, out over the ranchlands, stretching toward the mountains. The morning mist was lifting, revealing patchwork fields and grazing horses. Everything here felt solid, real in a way town life had stopped being. Tell me about the missing girls, Graham said quietly. So she did. About Jenny's research, the pattern she'd uncovered, the evidence hidden with Margaret, about Thomas's investigations, and the convenient accident that had widened her bed by half. Graham listened without interrupting, his presence an anchor in the storm of memory. The Harrisons haven't changed their methods, he said when she finished. Just gotten bolder. Dad found similar cases going back to the 80s. Girls who asked questions, who didn't fit the town's idea of proper behavior. His hand tightened on his mug. The silver mines weren't just for ore. A horse whinnied in the distance. The sound, carrying clear in the morning air. Catherine pulled the quilt tighter, suddenly cold, despite the sun. What happens now? Now, Graham straightened, setting down his coffee. You rest. Get stronger. The ranch is safe. My security team's discreet but thorough. Ex-military mostly, people who owe me from my contracting days overseas. And then? Then we get your evidence. Start building a case the Harrisons can't bury. He hesitated, then sat beside her on the window seat. But first, you need to decide if that's what you want. Fighting them, it won't be easy. Or safe. Catherine touched her split lip. Still tender. They made that decision for me when they hurt Jenny, when they killed Thomas. She met his gaze. I won't run. Something flickered in Graham's eyes. Respect. And maybe something more. Slowly, telegraphing his movement, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were calloused but gentle. Then we fight together. The morning sun streamed through the window, warming the quilt and Catherine's cheeks. Outside, ranch hands were starting their day, horses nickered in the stable, and somewhere a meadowlark sang. Here, surrounded by Graham's quiet strength and generations of family history sewn into soft fabric, Catherine felt something she hadn't since Thomas died. Hope. She reached for Graham's hand, squeezed it once. Together. The hidden police report lay between them on Graham's study desk, its yellow pages brittle with age. June 15th, 1985. Another girl. Another disappearance, another case marked resolved in Sheriff Mills's predecessor's careful handwriting. But it was the crime scene photo paperclipped to the corner that made Catherine's hands shake. A silver locket, nearly identical to her own, found in mineshaft number 7. Sarah Collins, Graham read from the file. 17. Wanted to be a journalist. Started asking questions about the mine worker deaths that summer. His jaw tightened. They ruled it a runaway case, just like the others. Catherine traced the locket in the photograph. Where did you find this? Dad's old case files. He had a hidden safe in the ranch office. Gamma Rose kept it secret all these years. Graham moved behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Look at the investigating officer's signature. Deputy Harrison, Catherine breathed. The mayor, back when he was just starting out. A family tradition. Graham's voice was bitter. Son follows father. Corruption breeds corruption. The study walls were lined with maps, topographical surveys of the region, old mining claims, property boundaries. Red pins marked known disappearances, creating a pattern that centered around the abandoned silver mines in the high country. 7. Girls over 40 years, Catherine said, counting the pins. That we know of. 8 now with Jenny. Graham leaned over her shoulder, adding another pin. His cologne, leather and sage, wrapped around her like a shield. But Jenny's different. She left evidence. Catherine turned, finding herself almost in his arms. Neither of them stepped back. The library documents, Margaret's keeping them safe, but the Harrisons will figure that out soon enough. Graham's eyes were dark with concern. We need to move fast. A knock at the study door broke the moment. Mike Chen, Graham's head of security, entered with a laptop. Satellite imagery came in, boss. You're gonna want to see this. The computer showed thermal images of the mining district. Most of the old shafts were cold, dead places. But mine number 7 showed heat signatures, recent activity. They're still using it, Graham said softly. After all these years. Catherine studied the glowing shapes on the screen. We need to get inside that mine. No. Graham's response was immediate, almost harsh. It's too dangerous. They'll be watching it now, especially after... He stopped, but Catherine heard the unspoken words. After what they did to her. I won't hide while another girl might be down there. She touched his arm, felt the tension in his muscles. Graham, please. Jenny trusted me. He closed his eyes briefly, and Catherine saw the battle between protection and purpose play across his face. When he looked at her again, his expression had shifted from concern to determination. We do this smart, he said. No risks. Mike, get me everything on the mine's layout, access points, ventilation shafts, structural surveys, and Catherine. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. We'll need Margaret's documents first. Create a paper trail that can't be buried. The afternoon passed in a blur of planning. Graham's military background showed in his methodical approach, while Catherine's knowledge of the town's rhythms helped identify windows of opportunity. They worked in seamless tandem, as if they'd been partners for years instead of days. As sunset painted the study walls gold, Catherine found herself watching Graham as he bent over the maps. The strong line of his jaw, the careful way he handled the old documents, the protective glances he thought she didn't notice. Something was growing between them, as undeniable as the evidence mounting on his desk. What is it? He asked, catching her gaze. She smiled slightly. Thomas would have liked you. He believed in justice too. Graham straightened, came to stand before her. Catherine. Just her name, but the way he said it made her heart skip. We're going to find Jenny and make them pay for Thomas, for all of them. She reached up, touched his cheek. His stubble was rough under her fingers. I know. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken things. Then Mike knocked again, bringing satellite updates, and they returned to work. But something had shifted, like the first tremors before an avalanche. The Harrisons had ruled through fear for generations, but they'd never faced anything like this. A wounded teacher's courage combined with a rancher's resources, bound together by a shared understanding of justice and loss, and maybe, growing stronger with each shared look and gentle touch, something more. The property tax notice was printed on official county letterhead, but Catherine knew extortion when she saw it. Reassessment due to historical undervaluation, she read aloud, standing in Graham's study. Effective immediately. New annual amount, $28,000. Her small teacher's salary might as well have been pocket change against such a sum. They're getting desperate, Graham said, examining the notice. Using official channels instead of threats, trying to squeeze you out legally. His voice carried that dangerous quiet she was learning to recognize. Good. Good? Catherine turned to him, puzzled. Means they're afraid. He set the notice aside, reached for the phone, because they should be, into the receiver. Mike, put me through to Harrison Holdings. A pause. Yes, I'll hold for the mayor. Catherine watched as Graham's expression shifted into something hard and cold, the face of a man who'd built a fortune in war zones. When he spoke again, his voice was pure steel. Richard. Graham Thorne. Just calling about some interesting financial moves you're making. He listened, then smiled without warmth. Funny thing about property taxes, they work both ways. Did you know I just bought controlling interest in the Silver Creek Mall? Amazing what you can do with overseas capital these days. Catherine's breath caught. The mall was the Harrison family's biggest source of legitimate income. "So here's what's going to happen," Graham continued. "Mrs. Lawson's property taxes will remain at their historical rate. And if anything at all happens to her property, I'll raise commercial rents across the board. We both know your tenants are barely hanging on as it is." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Graham's face remained impassive as he listened. "Glad we understand each other. Oh, and Richard, that's just the beginning. I've spent 15 years learning how to fight men like you. Remember that." He hung up, the gesture precise and controlled. Catherine stared at him. "You bought them all?" "This morning." He rubbed his jaw, the cold mask falling away. "Been buying up Harrison properties through shell companies for months. Planning to come home had multiple purposes." She stepped closer, drawn by the complexity of him. This man who could threaten millions in real estate deals one moment and look at her with such gentle concern the next. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he said simply. "I did." His hand rose, hesitated, then brushed her cheek where the bruises had finally faded. "I won't let them hurt you again." The touch sparked something electric between them. Catherine leaned into his hand slightly, feeling the calluses on his palm. "Graham." A knock at the door broke the moment. Mike entered with a laptop, his face grave. "We've got movement at the mine, boss. Multiple vehicles." They turned to the satellite feed. 3 black SUVs wound up the mountain road toward mine number 7. As they watched, figures emerged, carrying something long and heavy into the mine shaft. "Could be equipment," Mike offered. "Or a body," Catherine whispered. The image of Jenny, broken and alone in the darkness, rose unbidden. Graham's hand found her shoulder, squeezed gently. Time to accelerate the plan. "Mike, get the team ready. We move on the mine tomorrow night." To Catherine, "We'll get Margaret's documents at dawn, before they realize we're coming." She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the screen, on the dark mouth of the mine that had swallowed so many secrets. Graham moved to study the tactical maps, his shoulders set in familiar determination. But Catherine noticed his gaze returning to her every few moments, as if reassuring himself she was still safe. The afternoon sun slanted through the study windows, catching the silver threads in Graham's hair, highlighting the worry lines around his eyes. He'd built an empire to fight this battle, she realized. Come home, not just for revenge, but for justice. For all the lost girls, for his father, for the town itself, and somehow, improbably, for her. She crossed to him, touched his arm. He stilled, immediately, turning to her with that intense focus that made the rest of the world fade away. "Together," she reminded him softly. His eyes softened, and his free hand covered hers. "Together," he agreed. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the mountains, darkening the sky above mine number 7. Tomorrow would bring either justice or ruin. But for now, in the warm light of the study, Catherine let herself lean into Graham's strength, drawing courage from the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. The military tags clinked softly as Catherine lifted them from the old cedar box on Graham's desk. The moonlight streaming through the study window caught the stamped letters. Thorn, Graham J., Special Forces, O. Eneg. Below them lay a collection of worn photographs and a folded letter bearing a general's seal. Couldn't sleep either. Graham's voice came quietly from the doorway. He'd shed his usual button-down for a simple black T-shirt that revealed scarred forearms and the solid strength beneath. "Too much on my mind." Catherine held up the tags. "Found these while looking for the mine surveys." He crossed to her, took them gently. 15 years of running. That's what these remind me of." His thumb traced the raised letters. "After Dad died, I enlisted. Figured if I couldn't fight the corruption here, I'd fight something else somewhere else. Special Forces. 8 years. Afghanistan, Iraq, places they still won't name." He set the tags down, picked up the letter. "This was my last mission. A village in the Hindu Kush. Human traffickers using old Soviet bunkers. Girls disappearing. Local authorities paid to look the other way." His voice grew distant. "Sound familiar?" Catherine touched his arm, felt the tension there. What happened? West found them, too late for some. The ones we saved. He closed his eyes. Their faces, just like Jenny's age. Scared, hurt, but still fighting. When he looked at her again, there was raw pain there. I got shot making sure they got out. Medical discharge. Honorable, they said. Felt like running away all over again. You saved them, Catherine said softly. Not all of them. Never all of them. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking tired. Built my security company after that. Specialized in protecting the vulnerable. Made enough money to buy back half the county. But I never, he gestured at the ranch around them, never came home, never faced what I left behind. Catherine moved behind him, laid her hands on his shoulders, felt the knots of tension there, the weight he carried. After a moment's hesitation, she began to knead gently. Graham's breath caught, then released slowly. Catherine, let me, she said quietly. Her fingers worked the muscle, feeling old scar tissue beneath. You've been carrying this alone for so long. Not sure I know how to put it down. His voice was rough. When I saw you in that schoolhouse, it was like seeing every person I couldn't save. But this time I was there, in time. Her hands stilled. Is that why you're helping me? Redemption? He turned in the chair, caught her wrists gently. At first, maybe. But now, his thumbs traced circles on her pulse points. Now it's because you're the bravest person I've ever met. Because you make me want to be more than my scars. The moonlight painted silver shadows across his face, highlighting the vulnerability there. Catherine felt the last walls between them crumbling. Show me, she whispered. He stood slowly, never releasing her wrists. Then, with deliberate care, he pulled his shirt over his head. The scars told their own stories. Bullet wounds, knife marks, the legacy of a man who'd put himself between danger and the innocent. Catherine traced them with gentle fingers, feeling Graham's breath hitch. Beautiful, she said softly. His laugh was shaky. Catherine. No, she laid her palm over his heart. Beautiful. Every scar is a life saved, a battle fought, a reason you're exactly who you needed to be, here, now. Graham's hand covered hers, I'm pressing it closer. I dream about them sometimes, the ones I couldn't save, the bunker, Dad in the mine shaft. His voice dropped. You, in that schoolhouse. I'm here, she said. We both are. He pulled her closer then, wrapping her in strong arms. Catherine melted into him, feeling the heat of his skin through her thin nightdress. They stood like that, healing each other in the moonlight, until Graham spoke against her hair. I won't lose you, too. She lifted her face, met his dark gaze. Then don't push me away. Whatever comes tomorrow, we face it together. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her lower lip. Together, he agreed. And when he kissed her, it felt like coming home. Jenny's diary surfaced in the last place they thought to look, hidden inside a hollow history textbook in Margaret's library archive. The morning light had barely touched. The mountains when Catherine's trembling fingers opened its pages, Graham's solid presence at her shoulder. I figured it out, Jenny's hurried writing declared. The missing girls, the mine, everything. Mayor Harrison doesn't just run the town. He runs a network. Rich men from the city pay to make their problems disappear. Some of the girls fought back. Those are the ones who vanished. Catherine's heart pounded as she turned the pages. Names, dates, overhead conversations. Jenny had documented it all with a journalist's precision, but it was the last entry that made her blood run cold. Bradley caught me copying the old records. Said his father wants to talk. Meeting him tonight at the mine office. I'm scared, but I have to know the truth. If anything happens to me, look in mine number 7. That's where they take the fighters. The date was the night Jenny disappeared. Smart. A girl, Graham said softly, his hand finding Catherine's shoulder. She left us a map. Tucked in the diary's back cover was a detailed drawing of mine number 7's layout, copied from the county archives. Ventilation shafts, emergency exits, and, marked with a shaking hand, a new tunnel that didn't appear on any official plans. "She must have found the building permits," Catherine whispered. "The Harrisons have been expanding the mine in secret." Graham's fingers tightened on her shoulder. "The thermal signatures Mike found, they weren't just from activity, they're from living bodies." The implications hit Catherine like a physical blow. Jenny might still be alive, trapped in the darkness, but alive. "Graham," she turned to him, saw her own urgency reflected in his eyes. "We have to—" The library door opened. They spun, Graham automatically pushing Catherine behind him, but it was only Margaret. "Sheriff's deputies just pulled up outside," the librarian said, face pale. "Bradley's with them." Graham moved with military precision, photographing the diary's pages with his phone, while Catherine and Margaret gathered their research. Years of practice had taught them all how to hide evidence quickly, but as Catherine slid the diary back into its hollow book, a single photograph fluttered to the floor. She picked it up and the world stopped. It showed Thomas, her Thomas, meeting secretly with Graham's father outside mine number 7. The date stamp was 2 days before both men died. They were working together, she breathed. All this time, Graham took the photo, studied it with intense focus. Dad's handwriting on the back. "Got proof. Meeting TL tonight. If anything happens, mine number 7. His jaw clenched. They killed them both for getting too close. Boots sounded on the library steps. Catherine quickly tucked the photo into her blouse, next to Thomas's locket. Graham's hand found hers, squeezed once. "Back door," Margaret said, already moving. "My car's ready." They slipped out just as Bradley's voice echoed through the library. In Margaret's ancient Volvo, Catherine pressed against Graham in the back. Seat as they drove, slowly, casually, past the deputies' cars. Bradley stood on the library steps, watching them pass. His smile was cold as winter. "He knows," Catherine said once they were safely away. "He knows we found something." "Good." Graham's voice held that dangerous quiet again. "Let him come. We've got what we need now." The diary's weight pressed against Catherine's heart, alongside the photograph that linked their pasts in ways she'd never imagined. She looked at Graham, saw the same fierce determination she felt. "Tonight," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, pulled her closer. "We end this tonight." Margaret drove them back to the ranch via the old logging roads, taking the long way to avoid being followed. In the back seat, Catherine leaned into Graham's strength, thinking of Jenny in the darkness, of Thomas and Graham's father working together, of all the threads of fate that had brought them to this moment. Graham's lips brushed her temple. "Having second thoughts?" "No." She turned her face up to his. "You." Instead of answering, he kissed her, deep and sure. Margaret studiously ignored them in the rearview mirror. When they broke apart, his eyes held both tenderness and steel. "We go in smart. We get Jenny. We get proof. And then we bury the Harrisons under so much evidence they'll never see daylight again." Catherine touched the diary through her shirt. "For Thomas, for your father, for all of them," Graham agreed. "And for us." The morning sun caught his face, highlighting the determination there, the complexity of the man she was coming to love. Protector and avenger, wounded and strong. Tonight would change everything. But right now, held safe in his arms as they drove toward destiny, Catherine finally felt complete. The broken window in Graham's study rained glass across Catherine's research papers, the sound sharp as gunfire in the quiet night. The rock that shattered it bore a simple message: last chance. Graham's security team materialized from the darkness, weapons drawn, but the black trucks were already disappearing down the ranch road, leaving only dust and menace in their wake. "They're getting sloppy," Graham said, carefully brushing glass from Catherine's hair. His voice was calm, but she felt the tremors in his hands. "Desperate." 3 trucks, Mike reported from the doorway. "Bradley Harrison and at least 6 others. They're not even trying to hide anymore." Catherine picked up Jenny's diary from the glass-strewn desk, clutched it like a shield. "Because they know what we found, what we can prove." Graham's radio crackled. "Boss, movement in the east pasture. They're trying to spook the horses. Keep them contained," Graham ordered. Then softer to Catherine, "You should be in the safe room." "No." She met his eyes steadily. "I won't hide while you—" The explosion at the stables cut her off, turning night to day. The shock wave rattled the study windows, and somewhere in the darkness, horses screamed. Graham moved instantly, shielding her with his body as more glass rained down. For a heartbeat, they were pressed together in the chaos, his heart hammering against hers. "Catherine." Her name was rough in his throat. "Please, I can't fight them if I'm worried about—" "About what?" She pulled back enough to see his face, illuminated by the burning stables. "About losing me? Like you lost your father? Like I lost Thomas?" Pain flickered across his features. "Yes." She touched his cheek, felt the tension in his jaw. "Then don't lose me. Fight with me." Another explosion rocked the night, closer this time. Mike's voice was urgent through the radio. "They're moving on the house. Multiple targets." Graham's expression hardened, but his touch remained gentle as he pressed a handgun into Catherine's palm. "You remember what I taught you?" She rapped, her fingers around the grip, just as he'd shown her during their lessons. "Safety. Stance. Squeeze. Don't pull. Smart woman." His smile was fierce and proud. To Mike, "Fall back to the house. Defensive positions." Catherine could hear engines growling in the darkness, smell smoke from the burning stables. This was really happening. Bradley Harrison had finally shown his true face. Graham touched his father's military tags, still hanging around his neck after their earlier discoveries. "Catherine," his voice dropped, became intimate despite the chaos around them. "If this goes wrong—" She silenced him with a kiss, hard and quick. "It won't." He stared at her for a moment, something raw and wondering in his eyes. Then gunfire erupted outside, and training took over. They moved through the house's shadows in perfect sync, covering angles, protecting each other. Graham's security team called positions through the radio, tracking the attackers' movements. Catherine's heart should have been racing, but instead she felt an odd calm. This was what the Harrisons didn't understand. They thought fear and violence could break her, break them. But they'd already survived the worst, lost the people they loved, faced their demons, found each other in the darkness. The first attacker came through the kitchen door in a spray of splinters. Catherine's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him back into the night. Graham's follow-up ensured he stayed down. "Good girl," he breathed, and somehow, in the middle of it all, pride and love bloomed in her chest. They made their way too. The ranch house's heart, where thick walls and clear lines of sight gave them the advantage. Outside, Mike's team was pushing the attackers back, turning their own desperation against them. Bradley's voice carried through the chaos. "Burn it! Burn it all down!" But even as new fires bloomed in the night, Catherine saw the truth. The Harrisons had already lost. Every act of violence, every desperate attack, just proved what Jenny had discovered. They were criminals, thugs with expensive suits and borrowed power. "They don't know," she said suddenly, making Graham turn. "About the diary, the photo. They think we still need proof." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Which means they haven't cleared the mine." Catherine's mind raced. "Jenny, the other. Girls, the evidence. It's all still there." Graham touched his radio. "Mike, push them back. Make them think they've scared us." To Catherine, "We've got maybe 6 hours before they regroup and realize their mistake." She gripped his arm. "Tonight, then. We go tonight." His answer was another explosion, this one at the ranch's gate. But in the flash of light, Catherine saw Graham's expression, saw the same wild hope she felt, the same fierce determination. They had a chance, one chance, bought with fire and blood and broken glass, to save Jenny, to avenge their loved ones, to break the Harrisons' power once and for all. Graham's hand found hers in the darkness. Together, Catherine squeezed back, feeling the strength in him, the love that had grown between them like wildfire. Together. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance as county deputies finally responded. But Catherine knew the real battle. The one that mattered was still to come. In the darkness of Mine Number 7, where all the secrets lay buried, waiting to be brought into the light. The hand-drawn map spread across the ranch house's kitchen table, illuminated by emergency generators after the Harrisons had cut the main power. Jenny's careful sketches of Mine Number 7 had been supplemented by Graham's tactical annotations, transforming a schoolgirl's discovery into a battle plan. 3 access points. Graham traced them with calloused fingers. Main shaft here, emergency. Exit here, and the ventilation tunnel Jenny found. Around them, his security team checked weapons and communications gear, their movements precise and quiet. Catherine studied the map's details, remembering Jenny's written words. That's where. They take the fighters. The new tunnel branches off here. She pointed to Jenny's marks, below the second level, hidden behind the old copper processing room. Temperature readings confirm it, Mike added, spreading thermal imaging photos beside the map. Consistent. Heat signatures, multiple bodies. His voice softened. They're alive down there, boss. Graham's hand found Catherine's under the table, squeezed once. Hope and fear tangled in her chest. Hope for Jenny. Fear for what they might find in the darkness. We go in through the ventilation shaft, Graham continued. Small team, minimal. Noise. Mike's people create a distraction at the main entrance. Make the Harrisons think we're launching a frontal assault. They'll be expecting us, Catherine said quietly. After tonight's attack. Good. Graham's voice held that dangerous edge. Let them focus on the obvious threat. While they're watching the front door, we're slipping in the back, Catherine. I've finished. Their minds worked in sync now, like their bodies had during the firefight. The ranch house still smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Outside, dawn was still hours away, and the burned stables glowed dull red in the darkness. But inside this kitchen, surrounded by Graham's people and their shared purpose, Catherine felt only clarity. Sarah Collins's locket, she said suddenly, from the old case file. It was found in the processing room. Graham nodded grimly. Dad's notes suggested they used that room for disposing of evidence before they built the new tunnel. Then that's where they'll keep the records. Catherine traced the route with her finger. Everything they want to hide. Everything Jenny found, which makes it the most dangerous part. Of the mine. Graham turned to her, his face shadowed. Catherine, don't. She met his gaze steadily. I'm going with you. Boss, Mike interjected carefully. She knows the evidence we're looking for. Knows Jenny. We might need that. A muscle worked in Graham's jaw as he studied her face. Catherine saw the battle there, the protector warring with the tactician, the man who loved her fighting with the soldier who knew she was right. Your call, she said softly. Trust me or send me away. But remember what happens when we try to fight our battles alone. Graham closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, determination had won. Gear up, he told her, but you stay close. We do this together. The next hour passed in focused preparation. Graham's team equipped them with tactical gear, lightweight armor, night vision, communications headsets. Catherine watched him check every piece of her equipment personally, his touches lingering like promises. The state police are on standby, Mike reported. Anonymous tip about criminal activity at the mine. They'll move as soon as we give the signal. And the evidence? Graham asked. Catherine patted her tactical vest. Copies of Jenny's diary and the photo are already with Margaret, plus copies in 3 different cloud servers. She smiled grimly. The Harrisons aren't the only ones who can plan ahead. Graham's hand rose to his father's tags, still around his neck. Dad would have liked you, he said quietly. You've got his kind of courage. Must be why I fell for his son. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Graham went still. Even the busy kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, he reached for her, pulled her close. Say it again. Catherine lifted her face to his. I love you, Graham Thorne, and not just because you're fighting for Jenny or because you saved me. I love you because you make me brave, because you understand that some things are worth any risk. His kiss was fierce and tender all at once, tasting of coffee and gunpowder and hope. When they broke apart, his eyes held a light she'd never seen before. I love you, he said roughly. God help me, Catherine, I love you. And when this is over, she promised, we'll have time, all the time in the world. Mike cleared his throat. Boss, we're ready. They turned back to the map, to the mission ahead, but something had shifted. They weren't just fighting for justice now, or vengeance, or even to save Jenny. They were fighting for a future, their future. Graham checked his watch. 2 hours till dawn. Move out. As they headed for the vehicles, Catherine touched Thomas's locket one last. Time, wait for us, Jenny, she thought. We're coming. And this time, the darkness doesn't stand a chance. The recorded confession spilled from Mayor Harrison's lips like poison, his whispered words captured perfectly by the hidden microphone in Catherine's vest. You're too late. Bradley's already. Moving them deeper. You'll never prove anything, just like your husband never proved anything, Mrs. Lawson. Some secrets stay buried. But that was the end of the story. The beginning started 2 hours earlier, when Catherine and Graham first entered Mine Number 7's ventilation shaft, their world reduced to the green glow of night vision and the sound of each other's breathing through their tactical headsets. Movement at the main entrance. Mike's voice crackled softly. They took the bait. Full security team responding to our distraction. Graham's hand brushed Catherine's back, guiding her through the narrow passage. Mine air was thick with decades of secrets, heavy with the mineral scent of old silver and newer fears. Their footsteps, despite their care, echoed softly off walls that had witnessed too much suffering. Processing room ahead. Graham whispered, Catherine, remember, stay close. I know. She squeezed his arm once. They'd planned this. Trained for this, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of the mine's oppressive darkness. The processing room was a cathedral of rust and shadow. Ancient machinery loomed like medieval torture devices, their purposes long forgotten. But it was the floor that caught Catherine's attention, specifically the grooves worn into the concrete, leading to a drain that had seen things it shouldn't. Graham's tactical light caught something metallic near the drain. Catherine's heart stopped. Another silver locket, newer than Sarah Collins', its chain dark with old blood. Focus. Graham's voice was gentle in her ear. We're here for the living. The hidden door was exactly where Jenny's map showed, disguised as an electrical panel, modern keypad lock, incongruous against the mine's decay. Graham's electronic bypass made short work of it. Beyond lay a nightmare made real. The new tunnel was clean, well-lit, industrial. Security cameras covered every angle, all disabled now by Mike's team. But it was the cells that made Catherine's blood run cold. Small rooms with steel doors, each with a viewing window, each window covered, each door locked. Jenny? Catherine called softly, Jenny Martinez! A muffled sound from the third cell. Graham was already moving, his lock-picking tools swift and sure. The door opened with a protest of steel, and there she was, thin, bruised, but alive. Jenny Martinez looked up with eyes that had seen too much darkness. Mrs. Lawson, her voice was rough from disuse. You came? Of course I came. Catherine's arms went around the girl, feeling bone under thin cloth. I'll always come. Others, Jenny managed. There are others. On it, Graham was already working on the next door. One by one, the cells opened. 5 girls in total, each matching a missing person report, each carrying stories that would haunt Catherine's dreams. Medical team standing by, Mike reported. West entrance is clear for evacuation. Graham helped Catherine get the girls to their feet. Some could walk, others needed carrying. All of them were silent, as if they'd learned that survival meant making no sound. That's when they heard the elevator. Move! Graham ordered, positioning himself between the girls and the approaching danger. Catherine, get them out. No. She drew her weapon, saw his protest forming. Together, remember, The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding that seemed obscene in this place. Mayor Richard Harrison stepped out, flanked by armed men. His face showed only mild surprise at finding them there. "Mrs. Lawson, Mr. Thorne, I suppose I should have expected this inconvenience." His smile was practiced, political. "Though, I'm disappointed, Graham. Your father at least had the courtesy to die quietly. Dad died fighting you." Graham's voice was deadly calm. "Just like Thomas Lawson died fighting you. No more convenient accidents, Richard. No more buried secrets." The mayor sighed. "You never understood. This town needs us, needs what we provide. Important men pay well for discretion, for problems to disappear." His eyes fixed on Catherine. "Your husband never understood either. Such a waste." "Record," Graham breathed into their private channel. Catherine's finger found the microphone. "Switch. Tell me about Thomas," she said clearly. "Tell me how he died." What followed was everything they needed. The confession, the details, the years of crimes spilling from a man too arrogant to imagine he'd ever face justice. But Harrison wasn't finished. His smile turned cruel. "Bradley's already moving the real evidence, the ledgers, the client lists. You'll never reach the lower level in time. And these girls," he gestured dismissively, "troubled runaways. No one will believe." The gunshot took them all by surprise. Bradley Harrison stood in the elevator, weapon raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His father looked down at the spreading red stain. On his chest with genuine astonishment. "Sorry, Dad." Bradley's voice was ice. "But you talk too much." The sheriff's badge lay in the dust between them, its silver star catching the mine's harsh fluorescent light. Mayor Harrison's blood spread slowly across the concrete floor, each ripple of red marking another second in the deadly silence that followed Bradley's shot. "Always cleaning up your messes, Dad," Bradley said conversationally, stepping over his father's body. "Always doing what needed to be done." His eyes found Catherine's. "Just like with Thomas Lawson, he wouldn't take the payoff either. Such a waste." Graham's voice was tight with controlled rage. "The girls, Catherine, get them out." "Oh, I don't think so." Bradley's smile was his father's, but colder. "Not until we discuss the future of Deadwater Ridge. See, Dad never understood. You don't need to hide everything." "Just enough." He gestured with his gun. "The ledgers, the client lists, they stay buried, but the girls, let them go. Let them talk. Who'd believe them over the town's grieving reformer?" "Grieving?" Catherine's hand tightened on her weapon. "Well, naturally I tried to stop the violent escaped convicts who killed my father and poor brave Graham Thorne." Bradley's eyes glittered. "Sadly I was too late, but at least I saved the widow Lawson. Again. Rather poetic, don't you think?" Graham's laugh was unexpected, genuine, and thoroughly unnerving. Bradley's smile faltered. "Something funny about you dying, Thorne. You really should have checked the security feeds," Graham said conversationally. "Mike, you getting all this?" "Crystal clear, boss." Mike's voice carried through the mine's speaker system. "State police are loving the show, especially the part about Thomas Lawson." The color drained from Bradley's face as he truly realized what they'd done. The confession, the rescue, the trap. He moved with snake-like speed, grabbing Catherine before anyone could react. His gun pressed cold against her temple. "Back off, Thorne! I'll kill her! I swear to God!" But Catherine wasn't the same woman they'd tied up in her classroom. She moved as Graham had taught her, elbow to solar plexus, heel to instep, spinning away as Bradley's grip loosened. Graham's shot took Bradley in the shoulder, spinning him back against the elevator doors. The gun clattered away into the darkness. "That's for my father," Graham said quietly, advancing. Catherine retrieved Bradley's weapon, trained it on him with steady hands. "For Thomas." "For Jenny." The girl herself spoke from the tunnel entrance, supported by two of the other rescued girls. "And Sarah Collins, and all the others." Bradley looked between them, his facade cracking. For the first time, he showed fear. "You don't understand. The people involved, they'll never let you. Already done." Mike's voice again, satisfied. State police have the client lists. Seems your daddy kept an insurance file in his private safe. Amazing what a warrant can find. And these girls, Catherine's voice was steel. They're not runaways anymore. They're witnesses. Boots thundered in the main tunnel as state police tactical teams swarmed in, filling the space with light and justice and the sound of multiple weapons being aimed. Bradley Harrison, the lead officer's voice carried clearly. You're under arrest for the murders of Thomas Lawson, Marshal James Thorne, and Richard Harrison, among others. As they led Bradley away, Catherine saw something break in him, the same something that had broken in his father. The realization that power, no matter how deep its roots, could be torn up by courage and love and simple, unrelenting justice. Graham's arms wrapped around her from behind, solid and warm in the mind's chill. You okay? Catherine leaned back. Against his strength, watching the medical teams tending to the rescued girls. Better than okay. She touched Thomas's locket. We did it. All of it. We did. His lips brushed her temple. Together, Jenny approached them slowly, one of the emergency blankets wrapped around her shoulders. Mrs. Lawson, is it really over? Catherine pulled the girl into their embrace, felt Graham's arms encompass them both. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. You're safe. You're all safe. Above them, dawn was breaking over Deadwater Ridge. They could smell it even here underground, the promise of fresh air and new beginnings, of justice long delayed, but finally served. Come on, Graham said softly. Let's get out of the dark. They emerged into morning light, the rescued girls blinking like owls at their first sunrise in months. Catherine held Graham's hand. As they watched the state police vehicles fill the mining lot, red and blue lights painting the world in colors of justice, the nightmare was over. But their story, that was just beginning. The wedding ring caught the afternoon light as Graham slipped it onto Catherine's finger, its simple gold band somehow more beautiful than the large diamond rings that had once graced the hands of Harrison family wives. 6 months had passed since the night at mine number 7, and Deadwater Ridge was slowly learning to live in the light. My grandmother's ring, Graham said softly, standing with her on the ranch house porch. Gamma Rose would have loved seeing it on. Your hand. Catherine touched the ring with wonder, feeling the decades of love worn into its surface. It sat perfectly beside Thomas's locket. Old love and new finding harmony rather than conflict. Are you sure about all of this? Graham's laugh was tender as he pulled her close. About making an honest woman of the school teacher who helped me take down a criminal empire. Who made me brave enough to finally come home? His kiss was gentle. I've never been more sure of anything. The ranch had healed along with them. The burned stables had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The study windows now opened to a garden where Catherine's students came for afternoon lessons, their laughter slowly erasing the memory of breaking. Glass and gunfire. Jenny was there now, helping the younger children with their reading. The shadows behind her eyes were fading, replaced by something stronger. She'd testified at the Harrison trials with a courage that brought tears to Catherine's eyes, her clear voice helping to send Bradley and his conspirators away for life. She's thinking about law school, Catherine said, watching the girl gesture animatedly about some point of grammar. Wants to help other victims find justice, like teacher, like student. Graham's arms tightened around her waist. Speaking of justice, a cloud of dust on the ranch road resolved into Margaret's old Volvo. The librarian emerged with an armful of newspapers, her smile visible even at a distance. It's done, she called, hurrying up the porch steps. Look, the headlines told the story. Harrison criminal empire falls, final associates plead guilty. Below were photos of Bradley being led into court, of rescued girls reunited with families, of Mine the Mercer 7 being sealed forever. But it was the smaller headline that brought tears to Catherine's eyes. Thomas Lawson, James Thorne, posthumously honored, murdered heroes investigation key to breaking case. Dad would be proud, Graham's voice was rough. Of all of us. Catherine touched the article, tracing the photos of Thomas and James Thorne. They knew it would take both our families to bring down the Harrisons. They just didn't know. It would be us. Oh, I think they knew. Margaret's eyes twinkled. Why else would James Thorne make sure his son inherited the ranch? Why would Thomas leave everything to you instead of selling? They were playing a long game, those two, laying the groundwork for when the right time came. A burst of laughter from the garden drew their attention. Jenny had organized some kind of impromptu dance, the children spinning in the late summer light. Their joy was infectious, healing. The school board meeting is tomorrow, Catherine said. Turning back to Graham, vote on reopening the old library wing, making it a community center for counseling, legal aid. They'll vote yes. Graham's smile was confident. Amazing how cooperative people get when their own dirty secrets are at risk of exposure. Graham! But Catherine was laughing. He'd used his newfound influence in town carefully, focusing on healing rather than revenge. The Thorne family name was becoming synonymous with justice rather than tragedy. Margaret gathered her papers. I'll leave you two lovebirds to plan the wedding, though if you don't let me help with the flowers, I'll never forgive you. After she left, Catherine and Graham stood watching the children play as afternoon stretched toward evening. So much had changed, was still changing. The town was healing its wounds, facing its shadows. And here, on this porch, two people who had lost everything had found something new. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Almost Thorne. Graham's voice was teasing. Catherine turned in his arms, studying the face she'd grown to love. The strength and gentleness there, the scars worn with honor, the eyes that saw her completely. Just thinking about stories, she said. How the worst ones can lead to the best ones if you're brave enough to keep turning pages. Speaking of stories, Graham nodded toward the garden, where Jenny was now teaching the younger girls some complicated clapping game. I'd say we're helping write a pretty good one. Catherine's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. The wedding ring and Thomas's locket caught the same light, past and future in perfect balance. The best ones, she said softly, are the "Won't we write together?" Graham's kiss tasted of promise and morning coffee, of battles won and peace hard-earned. Around them, Deadwater Ridge was changing with the seasons, darkness giving way to light, one page at a time. The class photo captured everything that had changed in Deadwater Ridge. Taken on the steps of the newly renovated schoolhouse, it showed Catherine Thorne surrounded by her students, including 3 of the girls rescued from mine number 7. But it was the building behind them that told the real story. The fresh paint, the new sign reading Lawson Thorne Community Education Center, and the flowers blooming where there had once been only dust and shadows. Perfect timing, Graham said, lowering his camera. Just caught the sunlight in your smile. Catherine shooed. Her students back inside, where Jenny, home from her first semester of pre-law, was guest speaking about justice and healing. Through the open windows, her clear voice carried across the schoolyard. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting the monsters. It's helping others after you've faced them. She's good, Graham said, wrapping an arm around Catherine's waist. Stanford Law won't know what hit them in 2 years. They better not. Catherine leaned into his strength, still marveling at how natural it felt after a year of marriage. Have you seen the application essay she's working on? How are small towns? Darkness led to light. Graham's laugh rumbled through his chest. Subtle she's not. The town had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The Harrison mansion had been converted into a women's shelter, its grounds now hosting therapy gardens and counseling offices. The old mining office was a legal aid center, helping families navigate the complexities of testimony and recovery. Even the diner had transformed. New ownership, new name, Rose's Place in honor of Graham's grandmother, and a new tradition of free meals for anyone who needed help. No questions asked. Speaking of changes, Catherine turned in Graham's arms, studying his face. The doctor called. Graham went still. And it's a girl. Catherine's smile wobbled as tears filled her eyes. Due in February. The joy that blazed across Graham's face was brighter than any sunrise. He lifted her, spun her in a gentle circle, mindful of her barely showing bump. A girl, he breathed. A daughter. I was thinking, Catherine said when he set her down, about names. Rose, Graham suggested softly. Close. She touched his chest where his father's tags used to rest, now transformed into a frame holding photos of both their fathers together. Sarah Rose Thorne. Graham's breath caught. Sarah Collins, the girl whose locket had helped break the case open. The first victim whose story they'd uncovered. Catherine, so she'll know. Catherine said firmly, know that her family stands for justice, that we remember. From inside the school came the sound of applause as Jenny finished her speech. Students began filing out for lunch break, their chatter filling the yard with life and promise. Mrs. Thorne, one of the rescued girls, Lisa, now thriving in advanced placement classes, paused by them. Jenny was saying, well, some of us were thinking about starting a support group for other girls, like a safe space to talk about hard things. Catherine felt Graham's proud smile. I think that's a wonderful idea, Lisa. We could use the new community room. Really? Lisa's face lit up. Jenny said she'd help when she's home from college. And maybe you could too. Both of you. We'd be honored, Graham said gently. As Lisa hurried off to share the news, Catherine watched her students scattered. Across the schoolyard. Some headed for Rose's place, others for the library where Margaret still presided, now aided by a staff of trauma-informed counselors. Each child carried a story of healing, of darkness overcome by light. You know what today is? Graham asked quietly. Catherine nodded. 1 year since mine number 7. 1 year since justice had finally come to Deadwater Ridge. Thomas would be proud, Graham continued. Dad, too, of all of this. Of you. Of us, Catherine corrected, taking his hand. Of what we built. Together, the school bell rang, a clear tone that had once signaled fear, but now called children to safety and learning. Catherine felt her daughter flutter inside her, a tiny movement like hope taking wing. Together, Graham agreed, his hand covering hers over their growing child. Always together. Above them, the mountains still stood guard over Deadwater Ridge. But their shadows no longer held secrets, and their minds no longer swallowed innocence. Instead, they watched over a town reborn, where justice had taken root in fertile soil and love bloomed in once dark places. Catherine squeezed Graham's hand, feeling the strength of his wedding ring against her palm. They had written a new story for this town, page by determined page. And now, with their daughter growing beneath her heart, they were starting a new chapter, one filled with promise, purpose, and the kind of love that could light up even the darkest night. The thank you letter came on Jenny Martinez's law school acceptance day, her neat handwriting filling the page with words that brought tears to Catherine's eyes. You taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being broken and standing up anyway. That justice isn't just about punishment, but about healing. That love, real love, can light up even the darkest mine shaft. Because of you and Mr. Thorne, Deadwater Ridge isn't just a place of shadows anymore. It's a beacon of hope. Every girl you saved is a light in the darkness. And now, thanks to your example, I'm going to spend my life making sure that light spreads. In the end, that's what their story was really about. Not just a widowed teacher and a wealthy cowboy finding love in the ashes of tragedy. Not just about bringing down corrupt powers or saving innocent lives. It was about how courage, once lit, spreads like wildfire through the hearts of those who witness it. How justice, though slow, can heal even the deepest wounds. And how love, true love, doesn't just save us, it transforms us into something stronger than we ever thought possible. Will their love story change the world? Maybe not, but it changed their world, their town, their lives. And sometimes, that's exactly enough. Before we close this chapter, Tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touched your heart, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.